Right. Okay. It's 10 to 3. So what I'm now going to do is to introduce our next presentation of the day, and it's Thomas John from Five9, a relatively new partnership that we've set up between the two businesses. So already starting to be an interesting world working together. Lots of interesting opportunities. So I shall hand over to yourself, Thomas John, and we'll look at why cloud and why now.
Thanks, Jonathan. I'm thrilled to be part of this convergence, and it certainly is an incestuous industry. We all know each other. I was just giving Keith Jackson, the previous presenter, a bit of light banter there about the Zurich comment. We know each other from my days at In Contact, Nice In Contact, and his days at Ring Central. We've now graduated since then. He's at 8x8, obviously, and I'm at Five9. And so, Jonathan, thanks for the privilege of being here. It's been a great event so far, and I'm hoping in the next half an hour to talk you through why here at Five9 Britannic we're very excited about our industry and hopefully hit home some answers about why cloud and why now. As this slide clearly shows, my title says that I'm responsible for the channel, so partners here in EMEA for Five9, and that's an important nugget there, not in titles as such, but the fact that here in international theatre, Five9 have a partner-centric strategy. So that means for net new business, partners are key to a force multiplier effect in what is clearly an inflection point market for us, which brings me on to the next slide. So why cloud and why now rather? I'd rather firstly just tackle why are we so excited and how rare a moment is an inflection point to any particular industry, because this term can be used for any industry. In our industry, the contact center, this inflection point is causing a migration, and to use a biblical word, an exodus from the premise world to the cloud, where Five9 and Britannic, as the logos show here, are ready and have had a lot of practice. So we've had 20 years of dress rehearsal for this moment. But what's caused the inflection point? As you can see there is cloud, AI, and pandemic. And I heard Dan earlier, the keynote speaker here, speak about how data is the new oil. And he's spot on, he nailed it. AI and cloud were really something that got the market, the contact center market, to the point where a decision was being made upon whether to go future with cloud or stay with their current premise, or in some cases go hybrid. The secular tailwind that pushed folk over the edge really has been the pandemic. That is the third point that actually has caused what is now an inflection point in our industry. I just want to hammer home the definition of inflection point here again, and I'll sound very much like a live Wikipedia, but effectively an inflection point is when a set of external circumstances change the landscape of an industry radically in a short period of time. Now that's a mouthful, so I think the best way to explain it is through pictures and analogy, where an inflection point happened at a last industry we all remember, and it's the mobile phone handset. Nokia was king, and in fact in Forbes magazines here, they pretty much put them at the top of the perch, never to be knocked off. And it was the same for Time magazine. And a lot of us on here probably do remember, particularly if you're not Gen Z and you're like me, Gen X. You'll remember Nokia, in fact, being everybody's handset of choice, pretty much. What happened that year, the very same year that these things were touted about Nokia, was Apple released the iPhone version 1. And the rest, as they say, is history. Apple today is $1 trillion company, and the iPhone handset is on version, I believe, 13. So this again evidences that a real inflection point happened. And what I want to hit home here, hopefully, is the fact that one of the main reasons Apple were trusted by the consumer market was because they were seen as the innovator. They were born in that touchscreen UI and gave access to the internet to the consumer base at an ease of use that they demanded and expected. So that's just using one example. I want to bring back how Five9 and Britannic are in a similar lane back to the contact center industry, in that we were born in the cloud. So 20 years ago, we are seen as the consumers, as the market, as the innovator, as we've stayed true to the cloud over the last 20 years. And this slide talks to you again about the point where I say here, particularly in EMEA, we are channel centric. So our way to go into market, we feel, in terms of providing the best customer care wraparound, is to work with Britannic, who have a lot more expertise in other fields that give the consumer or the end user a much more holistic wraparound. And so that's the fourth sphere here you see in the top four spheres. The others are just giving you a little glimpse about some of the facts and figures that we've accrued over the last 20 years in our journey of experience in true cloud multi-tenant offering. As we see here, Rowan Trollope joined in 2018. He is our CEO, who was formerly at Cisco and today is a pioneer and actually leading out our strategy as CEO. Our CTO is Jonathan Rosenberg. Jonathan is someone who Rowan was one of the first folk to bring on as he joined as CEO. And Jonathan is co-author of SIP Protocol, as well as now today, head of our AI and CTO. So very exciting times as we move further in now. As you see the chronological graph below, you'll see our acquisitions have been true cloud and there to bring a wraparound for the contact center. We will always see a workforce management element, particularly when you go north of 200 seats. And our inference, the two that I want to touch on today, which is now known as Five9 Intelligent Virtual Agent, speaks to the demand for AI, where enterprises are asking us and other vendors to coach, how am I going to allow AI to optimize my contact center and therefore give a better customer experience to our customers? So hopefully the last two slides have really shown you why we're so excited here at Five9 about the industry. We believe the market is on fire. And here in Europe, there are 6 million contact center agents, of which a third are right here in our Isles, the UK. So that makes the total addressable market very, very big. And for us, certainly, an entrepreneurial thought comes into most people's mind in that we have to provide the best service for those who are now moving at a fast rate. Now, that said, only 10% circa, according to most analysts, have actually moved. So what we're looking at here is a huge 1/3 of Europe's market in the UK, and only 10% have moved from their previous legacy premise contact center. So now the total addressable market, as we look at that, becomes very exciting. It's a phenomenal opportunity. Is the rhetoric of this slide. And as you can see from the three pillars here, 2020 is the year that changed everything. As I mentioned earlier, the pandemic was the unexpected secular tailwind. And the reason for that is, and I think the previous speakers have nailed it, it's now no longer just a work from home. It's pretty much work from anywhere. And 2020 broke a few stigmas, actually, I would say, where in the past people would say, you're working from home, and it was seen kind of as a negative. And now it's very much an optimized way of looking forward. We have clients who, as we move into a more and more digital world, recognize that digital contact center experience becomes even more imperative and important. I can think of a car manufacturer where during the pandemic and to this day, they still have folk buying cars on a virtual showroom basis and going through the whole sales process via digital channels. The other thing I want us to note is the third pillar here, customer outcomes era. What we really are seeing is a consumer is king era. And the reason for that is because, number one, we believe the consumers are very soon going to be predominantly Gen Z, who have very high expectations. So we have a generation who in their personal life use Apple Siri AI and now expect that sort of technology to be brought into the contact center so that they can do that when they're having retail purchases or insert whatever service they want to have from whoever the provider. They really have high expectations. And so as vendors, but as also as partners, and we need to really make sure that's delivered. If it's not delivered, and back to my term of why the consumer is king, the choices are aplenty for the end user. The consumer has, and I'll use the coffee industry as an example here, has Costa, Nehru, Starbucks, and many other providers who they can alternate, and therefore the loyalty isn't as high as it used to be to the brand. And so this is all very exciting because this means that each brand has a responsibility to provide a very excellent level of customer service to retain that customer and therefore their commerce. So the final pillar of this presentation slide is to talk about consumer being king, because the choices are wide when it comes to brand. And we believe here, if you get it right, which we hope to do and we have done with Five9 and Britannic, the partnership is you can provide a level of customer service where the customers themselves become brand ambassadors. And I'll come on to that in a moment as the KPIs of our industry evolve from first call resolution to net promoter score and so on and so forth. There is an opportunity to provide a level of service where through social media, folk who use your services become brand ambassadors. And we'll talk about that in a second. I just wanted to bring some facts and figures as well, just to ensure to those listening that it's not me just raving a lunatic about how exciting the market is. I won't stay on this slide long. It speaks to, during the pandemic, how our share price grew from $50 to peaking at 200 actually. But as you see in this snapshot, which is slightly out of date, tremendous growth in a very short period of time because of the demand for true cloud. Another evidence of that is the intent of Zoom to acquire Five9, and whilst it didn't actually materialize, it was exactly that, an intent, which, I mean, for our brand, it didn't do any harm, I guess. Being associated with Zoom for 6 months is something that does bring the brand recognition up. But on a more serious note, the integration to Microsoft Teams is something during the process of intent we had to not just convince, but also just ensure the market needs to know that we are investing heavily in our integration with Microsoft Teams, and that's going to continue forth. I just felt I'd show this slide just to let everybody know a glimpse of why this actual acquisition didn't happen, is because during the process, the share prices fluctuated, and it got to a stage where Zoom would have to have come in with an even bigger offer. The spin I used to the market is they couldn't afford us in the end. And actually, on hindsight, looking at the fact that Microsoft Teams has 80% of the UC market, it was a blessing in disguise. And I'm happy to talk through this with others on a Britannic session about how key being UC agnostic is in our industry. Here you get a glimpse of some of the logos. And again, I want to point to the evidence of how can you prove that we're in an inflection point. That's when logos such as Aviva and Volvo trust Five9 by moving to the cloud. Huge contact center seats on premise, requiring the resilience, uptime, and security for their customers to move to a true cloud platform. And as you can see here with the level of interactions and the other logos you see on this slide, we well and truly are in a place in time now where brands recognize that whilst it is cutting edge and feature rich, more importantly for them, the security and quality of voice are no longer just at a par. And I want to make that key here with Five9 and Britannic. We're not looking to copy and paste someone's current contact center. We want to take them to the next era, to the next stage, to digital transformation. So not just a like-for-like swap out, but taking the likes of Aviva to the next place. And speaking of Aviva, I thought I'd drill down a little bit into how a 5,000 seat and above contact center would move, how long a sales cycle it was. Well, it was certainly a complex one, because you're taking an enterprise who have been using premise for many decades to the true cloud. And as I said earlier, security, resilience, and particularly in the insurance vertical, compliance played a huge key role in the transfer, the migration. But what I would say is something that I found certainly we picked up on was Aviva's dependency on Five9 to coach them on how they're going to take their contact center into the AI world. They relied on us for an element of consultancy, and that's just not from a billables point of view. The rhetoric, one of the C-level staff, you guys have done this for 20 years, and more recently you've integrated inference, and we're relying on you on how we're going to see a benefit of AI. And so augmenting the agent's interaction and bringing a level of first call resolution through AI and analytics. As Dan put the data earlier today, he made a very valid point, a salient one. The data that runs to and fro a contact center's pipe is customer-rich data. And that is indeed the oil of this era. And Aviva relied on us very much for how we can take the contact center to the next generation and therefore retain their consumers and give them the trust that they are with a future-proof company. I mentioned earlier a couple of new acronyms or KPIs that are coming in a lot more in this era. In the past, and I still believe still important to our industry, are KPIs like first call resolution and average handle time. But that's pretty much under the bonnet contact center. Those who eat and breathe contact centers will know about. But what we're seeing from a brand recognition is a place where Net Promoter Score scales from -100 to 100 and talks about how the customer service level is for a brand. So effectively what we're seeing here is if you're above 70, you provide world-class customer care for your consumers. Netflix is pretty much on the top league for that. And what we like to let people know about at Five9 is our Net Promoter Score. And I want to be clear here that this is specifically for our professional service team and our customer support. So on our customer support post-sale, we score 85 on Net Promoter. And on a professional services, so the deployment, we score 86. Effectively, in its simplicity, what this is saying is what we promise during the sales cycle is what we deliver during deployment, and thus saith the customer. So it's very much data collected on the voice of the customer. And as I'm sure a lot of folk will understand here, this is critical in how we persuade folk that they're in safe hands, that we're going to deploy the statement of works exactly, maniacally, with a methodology led by our PS team to what they expect. And this is going to be critical as we go further and further in and hopefully take that penetration rate beyond 10%. And over the next 5 years with Britannic, hopefully enjoy as we see it reduce more and more unto 100%. And it's necessary. This is something that we feel is becoming more and more, not a nice to have, but actually a need. And again, the pandemic was very much a tailwind for that, where folk in the past would have used a shortcut to send people to work from home. Perhaps a VPN would be a hack, but what they realize is they compromise the quality of service at the contact center. And now the multi-true cloud offers a return of investment, the OPEX model. And it's not as simple as just chopping it up into 12 months. There's a lot of experience behind how you speak to peaks and troughs and manage out those kind of figures in terms of usage of agents. We also, as I spoke earlier, have the need to retain performance teams. And I'll be touching on it later on this presentation as to how important the agent is to the quality of customer service he or she gives to the end user. And that's something you'll see very soon in one of the slides. In fact, so soon, it's the next one. To this day, the single biggest cost to the contact center is the agent. It's the human. And that's because of the salary, but more importantly to the CIO, the cost of training, and seeing them leave with a very low, in some average cases, it's actually 2 months. And that's a huge cost to the business. And so what folk realize is we really need to have a solution to that. And previously working from a building in a contact center, this is something that, in fact, I myself has worked as an agent in a contact center, and the prize for the most calls at the end of the day would have been a go on the pool table. And whilst that's great for about half an hour, it's not going to keep you employed longer than the time you have in your mind. The other factor I really want us to think about today is mental health, illness and condition, which is a subject that's close to my heart. It's and I want us to all just picture this for a second as we take a breath. So the contact center industry or a call center agent didn't have the best or most glamorous of job in the first place. They're told to sit down and take calls, and more importantly, complaint calls more often than not. And what you'll find here is it does drain you. Now, in the pandemic, and as we see more and more with businesses and BPOs, they're now being told, well, you can work from home. So they no longer even have the buzz of working next to colleagues physically. They're in a room, alone at home, and told to get on with their job, and that is could be making many thousands of dials if they're outbound, or like I said earlier, receiving complaint calls inbound, and we have an impact on their mental health. So not just is this about dollars, pounds, and euros, this is also about the mental health of the agent. And I want to just underline here, if you have an unhappy, unenthused, unmotivated agent, then the chances are very high that they're going to give a bad experience as the calls keep coming in, and they don't stop. If you've worked in a contact center, you know that. What we're finding more and more successful, and all size enterprises, vertically agnostic in industry, are picking up on, is that gamifying their world is a game changer. That's a bad pun. I'm a daddy, so I'm allowed daddy jokes. It is a game changer. It is something that brings the virtual video gaming world into the life of an agent who, by the way, if they are Gen Z, are used to smartphone and live off their phones normally. So asking them to put their phone away in a locker or not have anything to do with their job was always going to be a switch off. Here, we bring the gamified experience into the contact center, and they get a virtual character, as you can see here. This is meant to be me. Somewhat flattering. I don't own a dog, but Mark Plant, our partner marketing director, has a sense of humor, and he put a dog there. And here, look, you can collect coins and tokens, but e-coins essentially allow you to purchase prizes. Now, those prizes could range between iPods to iPhones to PowerBook Max. And I often, if this was a live session, would ask folk, who do you think, or what do you think rather, is the most popular prize amongst this generation as they start saving these coins? And what people don't realize, it's actually Fridays off. So they can keep enough coins and take Fridays off. The ROI impact we've seen, particularly in the last 6 months, is phenomenal. Agents are staying for another 6 months longer. More importantly, their mental health is a lot higher in terms of enthusiasm, motivation. How do we measure that? Well, some of it isn't tangible, some of it is. The fact that they actually do e-learning at home, they actually, even out of office hours, will go home and learn about the product they're providing customer care to, so they can accelerate their point system and even compete with their peers the next day, because their world is now gamified. So that's another product that I feel we needed to hammer home today, just to tell you how exciting it is and how cloud, and why now we should move over and bring the technology to a future rich capacity. This is I call this the route to market spinning wheel. It's a segmented pie chart of all the partners that Five9 work with. If there's one word I want us to pull out of it, is the fact that we're agnostic when it comes to these lines of business. So CRM, it's not just Salesforce or Dynamics we work with, it's ServiceNow, it's Zendesk, and the CTI integration are deep in that we believe it's the end user who should tell us who they want to use from a CRM, from a UC, and from a WFM perspective. So if there's one thing we want to pull out of this slide, is that Five9, and as you can see there, Britannic being an authorized reseller of ours here, want to maintain an agnostic approach for the end user, so that it's them that dictate, based on their business needs, what other solution providers they want to work with. And if it is in an arbitrary sense, Zoom, Salesforce, and Verint, then we need to be able to integrate, which we do, to those products. The other factor that we're finding more and more prevalent as we work with huge companies such as the insurance company I mentioned earlier, and more recently a global logistics company that actually doubles the size of Aviva, is the need for local data retention, but also quality of voice. And as we can see from this slide, we're expanding our data centers as well as using public cloud to get edge technology all across the world. As a lot of us here know, these big enterprises predominantly use gateways for those legacy providers who are onshore. So as the cloud goes further out, we at Five9 believe that it's in our interest now to invest in a far more wider reaching international carrier grade true cloud platform. So that's more of that. If you want to know, please contact Jonathan or the team, and we can talk more about how we're expanding across the globe. This is a partnership we're very excited about, and it's not just a software decision. This is a make or break situation. We like to say the contact center is the new front door. Hopefully I've managed to show that it's firstly a very exciting time. It is also a radically changing time. We're in transition mode, and therefore this is not just a software decision. This is going to impact an enterprise's life and their success when it comes to revenue. And it's not just voice, as we see here, IVR, CRM, UC, workforce automation, and intelligent virtual agent all play a part. And all of those require not just coaching, but also consultancy from an element of how are you going to take us and make an impact. And Britannic with Five9 together have the power to do that. We believe, we're confident we can produce end results that aren't just, like I said, a like for like of what they had before, but taking them to the next level. I just used that sentence, and I think it's apt to close with that, in the fact that the contact center is the new front door. It's something that our CEO Rowan mentioned, and I think it's something that is a great rhetoric to use, because essentially when folk do call in, whether it's to complain, and it's rarely to compliment, but more importantly to e-commerce, it is either through a website or through the contact center, and there's integration with our IVA into the website to produce the self-service element. So we're suddenly finding the contact center imperative and critical to the success of an enterprise. I think with that, we've reached the end of my slideware, and I believe, Jonathan, there he is. He's popped up just in time, and the monologue ends, Jonathan.
Yeah, really interesting. And look, I think there's a number of points I'll pick up on, and anyone's got any questions or comments they want to debate, please do add them into the chat. I can see there's a few there already. So I'll start off by just picking up on a couple of the points from one of the slides, which was about the agent count. So this during COVID, right? The agent count doubled. Now, I found that really interesting. The agent count doubled, and the agent minutes increased 1.5-fold. So I think that really points to the importance of the contact center in an organization, in being that front door into the business. But how did Five9 support that growth? Because that's pretty rapid, right? Doubling the number of people working within a contact center environment. So how did you and how could you support it more readily with a cloud type solution?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the psychology behind the work from home factor is that it wasn't just contact center agents that had to work from home. In fact, at the peak, Jonathan, you remember everyone went home. So what people used to call back office suddenly have an element of front office about them, and our partners Verint, but of course we have our own workforce management solution through Virtual Observer, became a lot more prevalent to the entire enterprise. So it suddenly wasn't just the contact center agent that needed resource planning or motivation or call routing. You suddenly found the need for every single member of the enterprise almost. So that spoke to a lot of the doubling. But I guess the best way to answer that would also be talk to the integration to Teams and to Zoom from a UC point of view, to talk about presence and interoperability. So the ability for the agent to see the presence of a back office user. And in fact, I'm steering away from back office now. There's even a mid office term that we want to use, right? Because it's such a new place to be, that hence why the doubles the figures of the agents and so on and so forth.
Okay, no, it's really interesting, and certainly in a time when so many organizations are and should focus on customer experience, and it's obviously a big battleground and differentiator that we should focus on. It does underline the importance that everyone involved in that interaction and that chain to support the customer has an impact on customer experience. And I think Net Promoter Score, there's a number of other tools that people use, but certainly the growth and awareness of things such as Net Promoter Score or Customer Effort Score once again reinforces the importance of effective, effortless customer interaction and the impact it has on brand. And I think that there was a point you made about we're all brand advocates, right? And it's probably one of the most important parts of any marketing strategy is to make sure that the brand advocates, the experience that people are getting based upon the increase in volume of surveys and things like TripAdvisor that people go to make decisions upon, right? So how can we? You talked about voice of the customer. How can we use technology to not only have a point in time around measuring likelihood to recommend, but how can we get a real sense of the temperature of the customer experience through every interaction to be able to funnel that back into our improvement and decision-making process?
Yeah, and that, that's in fact, there's three parts to that question. So I'll take it from the top down, right? And the IVA, Intelligent Virtual Agent, is going to be key to that. It is on the spot, live data analytics, bringing forth not just the data, but you can also use that data to coach the agent. So you're suddenly entering an era where, it doesn't have to be a barge on a voice whisper into the agent's ear. We're talking about on their desktop, speaking about how to coach the agent on what to say next. And then a post-call survey. All of this lively retained, and through the gamification. But gamification is one part of an umbrella called performance dashboard. So that performance dashboard also collates a lot of that live data, and it's done through surveys. So we want to make sure that the customer is happy. And if they're not, more importantly, what can we do to compensate and make it happy next time? And I think as enterprises realize more and more, they need to do that, because the power of the voice of the customer is suddenly magnified because of the internet. You mentioned TripAdvisor. My wife, for example, doesn't go to a hospitality hotel website to choose where we're going to stay. Well, she will go to TripAdvisor to check what other users have aggregated and see their score. That's much more of a weighting system for Mrs. John than what Radisson would say about their website. I'm speaking arbitrarily here because I don't want any libel cases coming my way, right? But speaking of that, you suddenly have a place where, and as dangerous as it does sound, the reality is this: if you do not provide a great customer service, and if you're unlucky enough where that person has a lot of influence on the internet, you can actually see your brand crash and burn. I don't know if anyone has any free time later today. I urge you to look up United Brake Guitars, the airline industry, who broke somebody's guitar. And unluckily for them, he was a lead singer of a band who wrote a song about it and uploaded it on YouTube. 100 million hits later, the brand's share price has taken a hit. So United Brakes Guitars is the actual YouTube link. But again, it speaks to what you said. Lastly, and this is the first part of your question, and it's a very pertinent point, there are a lot of components to the contact center and the sphere around it. You're talking about the CRM, you're talking about WFM, UC, and even within the contact center, IVA. How does an end user manage all those things? And I think that's where the power of a partner like Britannic comes in. Because we're going to focus on what we're good at, Five9. We're going to stay in that lane of true cloud contact center and maybe use some of the other ISVs within our ecosystem. But Britannic provide that, and I don't like the term one throat to choke. I prefer one back to pat. But you get what I mean by the whole sort of one place who they know is looking after our needs. And I think that's why the partner route to market is a very strong one, Jonathan.
Thank you. And that is... it's absolutely key. It is that partnership approach across all stakeholders involved in change and optimizing how people are using technology to work. I think gamification is, it's a term that's been talked about for some time and really will gather momentum as we go. I think there's some tremendous use cases to improve the engagement and the motivation of how people work. And I agree with you. People, when they see the benefit and they see the rewards in a method and using tools that they're used to in their own personal lives, they do become more engaged. They do invest more time to build the skill set to positively compete. I think the other one is very much understanding that experience that's delivered through customers, and then using automation tools, whether it be tools such as IVA, to actually recommend learning points and improvement areas. I think that's going to be really important to lift the performance, the consistency of the experience across the organization. So I think there is a point there, isn't there, about technology helps to share best practice and learning, and if it's designed in the right way, you're able, and using tools such as gamification, you're able to lift the experience, which has a significant benefit to the brand value of the organization.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And as William Irvine, who's a partner director for you guys, actually, says quite eloquently, this is now a need time, right? So if we don't figure it out now, then a lot of us in a lot of trouble there.
And obviously, there's been a big, COVID, and has really helped to fuel the drive to the cloud. What would you say traditionally have been the barriers to move from on-premise to cloud, and are they still there? Are they easy to overcome? What considerations should customers have in that journey?
Yeah, and some of the barriers are there. Some of them are psychological. I'll touch on those. And I literally have had a CTO recently tell me there is comfort for him to walk into a server room and see blinking lights, right? That he knows that his hardware is on premise and it's there and it just feels more comfortable. So how we overcame that was to ensure that we are very transparent with our uptimes, and our SLAs are key to that. So when it comes to partners as well as end users, they have access to a trust site that talks about our uptimes. And of course, the transparency on updates and changes and so on, key to persuading a company to overcome the barrier of that resilience or uptime. I think that's one of the major issues we have there. The other issue, what I'm seeing more and more, is a technology or IT team who feel that they would become obsolete with an off-the-shelf, dare I say, contact center product. And I think that can also be said the same for IVA, where there's it's an incorrect understanding that IVA will be a group of robots replacing the humans in the contact centers. And that's certainly not the case. What IVA is augmenting the first interaction that a caller has with that agent and actually empowering the agent. Is there an element of, will you need as many? Probably, but what we say is you're going to grow, so you want to move those agents to do something else that actually in their lane of expertise. So there are still challenges, there are still issues as we move forward, and I think one of my last slides speak to how having architecture globally, and particularly with Brexit, where not just your primary but your failover data center has to be onshore, Britain in this case, and mainland Europe in this case, where you suddenly need 4 instances then because of Brexit. And I think that's something that is key, and we've noted that, hence why I shared that slide on our roadmap for infrastructure. That's another key element to your question.
Thank you. And I think, again, there's an important point you've raised there, which is about probably fear of change. So the IT team worried about becoming obsolete, people working within the contact center environment being, scared of the arrival of the bots and the impact it can have on their work. And I think we should, we've, as a business, we've been providing cloud solutions, goodness me, 10 plus years, right? And what we've seen working with customers is if you do it right, you design it right, you actually free people's time up to work on more interesting things, deliver new value, and spot opportunity for innovation. And I think this is the world in which we live. I mean, this was part of the the morning's conversations as well. Is in change is the only constant. It gets faster and faster. Customers' expectations are only ever going to go one way. We all need to work at speed. The complexity of what we do is going up and up. So it's about how do we compete, how do we redesign for this new economy, and part of that is actually freeing people up to give them the headspace to redesign and reimagine and create new value. So I think we shouldn't be afraid of cloud. It's a great opportunity to give people the not just the remit, but the time back to reimagine what they do. And as I said, we've seen this across a number of customers where we end up working on new, very interesting transformation projects versus just merely focusing on keeping the lights on, right?
Yeah, no, totally. And I think what I would say is I once did say 3 years ago when asked this question, when you see finance or insurance companies as well as emergency services trust a true cloud platform, you will realize that we've got to a place where the trust is at a level of inflection point, and that's exactly where we're at now. So very exciting times.
Absolutely, and I think that the last point I'll make there is, there's been a lot of talk today about customer experience and employee experience, and how getting these things right, it creates, positive momentum and ultimately good business, right? Good business, good service, and the point of using technology and gamification, augmenting the workforce. The example you gave of agents staying on average 6 months longer in a time when resource is, there's a scarcity of resource and talents, and we want to train and bring people through. We need, that's a mutual investment. As business leaders, we need to make sure that we're investing in people and people are investing in us, and technology. Certainly from what you talked about there, you provided a number of examples where that can help to underpin that ethos. So thank you very much.
No, it's okay. I want to thank you. I mean, I've stopped evangelizing cloud, Jonathan. That was 2 years ago. Now the problem we have, and it's a good problem, is the demand is at a very high level. And I'll speak on behalf of Rowan Trollope and Dan Birkland, our president of Five9. We have no intention to deal with that demand by hiring thousands of sales reps if we have precisely chosen partners across the region who is our preferred route to market. So that's a great problem to have, and we are very excited for both this partnership with Britannic, and I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity today to be at Convergence.
Pleasure, and in return, we're very much looking forward to and already enjoy working with yourself. So thank you for your involvement today. Great presentation, and hopefully given some additional elements for people to consider in their future strategy.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you.